Shravanam Diaries podcast.
Hare Krishna everyone, we're continuing to read the Bhagavad Gita as it is, the book by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda, Bhakti Vedanta, Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Chapter 13, Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness, text 25. Dhyanena atmani pashyanti kechidatmanam atmana anye sankhena yogena karma yogena chapare. Some perceive the supersoul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruitive desires. Purport. The Lord informs Arjuna that the conditioned souls can be divided into two classes as far as man's search for self-realization is concerned: those who are atheists, agnostics, and skeptics are beyond the sense of spiritual understanding. But there are others who are faithful in their understanding of spiritual life, and they are called introspective devotees, philosophers, and workers who have renounced fruitive results. Those who always try to establish the doctrine of monism are also counted among the atheists and agnostics. In other words, only the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are best situated in spiritual understanding, because they understand that beyond this material nature are the spiritual world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is expanded as the Paramatma, the Supersoul in everyone, the all-pervading Godhead. Of course, there are those who try to understand the Supreme Absolute Truth by cultivation of knowledge, and they can be counted in the class of the faithful. The Sankhya philosophers analyze this material world into 24 elements, and they place the individual soul as the 25th item. When they are able to understand the nature of the individual soul to be transcendental to the material elements, they are able to understand also that above the individual soul there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the 26th element. Thus, gradually, they also come to the standard of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Those who work without fruitive results are also perfect in their attitude. They are given a chance to advance to the platform of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Here, it is stated that there are some people who are pure in consciousness and who try to find out the Supersoul by meditation, and when they discover the Supersoul within themselves, they become transcendentally situated. Similarly, there are others who also try to understand the Supreme Soul by cultivation of knowledge. And there are others who cultivate the Hatha Yoga system and who try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by childish activities. Text 26. Anye tvevam ajanantah shrutva nyebhya upasate tepi chatti tarantyeva mrityum shruti parayana. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Purport. This verse is particularly applicable to modern society, because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a good chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing, because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress. Especially, according to Lord Chaitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization, and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home. Text 27. Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam sthavarasjangamam kshetra kshetragya samyogat tadvidhi bharatarshabha. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Purport. Both material nature and the living entity, which were existing before the creation of the cosmos, are explained in this verse. Whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and material nature. There are many manifestations like trees, mountains, and hills which are not moving, and there are many existences which are moving, and all of them are but combinations of material nature and the superior nature, the living entity. Without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. the relationship between material nature and spiritual nature is eternally going on, and this combination is affected by the Supreme Lord, because He is the controller of both the superior and inferior natures. The material nature is created by Him, and the superior nature is placed in this material nature. And thus, all these activities and manifestations take place. Okay, text 28. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyatva vinashyantam yah pashyati sapashyati. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees. Purport: anyone who by good association can see three things combined together: the body, the proprietor of the body or individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul, is actually in knowledge. Unless one has the association of a real knower of spiritual subjects, one cannot see these things, these three things. Those who do not have such association are ignorant. They simply see the body, and they think that when the body is destroyed, everything is finished. But actually it is not so. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and the super soul exist, and they go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. The Sanskrit word Parameshvara is sometimes translated as the individual soul, because the soul is the master of the body, and after the destruction of the body, he transfers to another form. In that way, he is master. But there are others who interpret this Parameshvara to be the super soul. In other case, both the super soul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see what is happening. Okay. Text 29. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavasthitam ishvaram nahi nastyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere, in every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus, he approaches the transcendental destination. Wow, beautiful, nice. Wait one moment, okay. Purport. The living entity, by accepting this material existence, has become situated differently than in his spiritual existence. But if one understands that the Supreme is situated in his Paramatma manifestation everywhere, that is, if one can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every living thing, he does not degrade himself by a destructive mentality, and he therefore gradually advances to the spiritual world. The mind is generally addicted to sense-gratifying processes. But when the mind turns to the Supersoul, one becomes advanced in spiritual understanding. It's important to understand, right, that sometimes, like, I used to think, or I used to meditate only that, like, me and my Supersoul, you know, and like, yes, there is a Supersoul with me, like my friend, you know. But here it says that one who sees Supersoul equally present everywhere, in every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. So turning yourself to the Supersoul doesn't just mean my Supersoul, you know. It also means like every Supersoul, like every living entity has one, right? So it's like, this is a very important point, actually. It reminded me again, Brahminical culture and ethics at Mayapur Academy, where Premanjan Prabhu, Bimal Prasad Prabhu, they would encourage that vision from their students. They're like, have you seen every living entity as the temple of the Lord? Have you seen, you know, it's like Krishna in the heart of everyone. That's like the vision of a learned person, of a devotee, of a true yogi, bhakti yogi. And then we'll become advanced in spiritual understanding, as Srila Prabhupada says. So with that wonderful exercise, we shall conclude today. Enjoy. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The book links, previous episodes timeline, and biography of the author can be found on shravanamdiaries.com. The link is in the description, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Krishna